A very good morning to all. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on navigating through the new normal with Agile Finance. I'm Priscilla from SBF, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone. For you to have a good experience, let's go through several important housekeeping notes before we get started. By now, you should have full video and audio capability so that you can later see and hear our presenters as well as to view their presentations. If you have any questions for the panelists, please type them into the Q&A panel. We'll consolidate and bring up your questions during the panel discussion and hope to address as many of them as possible. Lastly, at the end of the webinar, you'll be prompted to provide your feedback on how you felt the session went. I will now invite Mr. Kenny Chan, Membership and TAC Engagement, Deputy Director of Singapore Business Federation, to say a few words. Kenny, please.
Very good morning to everyone. A very good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us here today at the webinar on navigating the new normal with Agile Finance. I'm very happy to note that we have more than 200 participants who are attending this webinar. Many finance and accounting professionals have been working from home for the past few months. And even as we move to phase 2 today, this work arrangement is still the default in most companies. Now, this adds to existing challenges on how companies manage their financial and accounting processes. SBF is hence pleased to collaborate with Blackline and Ernst & Young for this webinar. We hope that you can obtain good takeaways on how finance and accounting departments can gain skill sets and build new capabilities. I would like to also take this opportunity to highlight recent SBF initiatives. Earlier this week, SBF launched 2 initiatives to strengthen businesses and support workers in need. SBF and Enterprise Singapore will set up a $2.5 million Rising in Support of Enterprises or RISE Fund. We will partner the SBF Foundation in its $2 million industry-led compassion fund to help businesses tide over the challenges arising from COVID-19 and strengthen workforce resilience. We welcome you to go to our website to find out more details of these initiatives, as well as other activities that SBF has introduced to help businesses move beyond COVID-19. With that, I wish everybody a fruitful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Without further ado, I will now invite our first speaker, Mr. Gary Saw, Regional Vice President from Blackline, to kick off the session. Mr. Saw, please.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, Kenny. Just let me share the screen. Thank you. Okay, can everyone see me? All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. I'm honored to be here and would like to thank Singapore Business Federation for organizing today's session. My name is Gary. I'm the Regional Vice President, managing the business operation for Blackline in Singapore. We are the global organizations that provide leading cloud-based automation solutions on accounting to help finance teams to work easier and lead with clarity and confidence. We have more than 3,000 customers, including Coca-Cola, Nike, and Domino's, that trust Blackline by unifying their data and processes, automating their repetitive work, and help them to achieve faster financial close with complete and accurate results. Coincidentally, today also marked the phase 2 of Singapore reopening. So I wish everyone well. I know everyone affected, but also please do stay safe. So let me start. Welcome to the new normal. And today it's the best time to share as well because we are envisaged this is going to be the new economy, how it's going to look like. It offers challenge and promise to all of us, be it companies and individuals. From the latest MAS survey early this week, economists predicted or shared that the full year Singapore GDP is going to decline by 5.8%, with 11.8% year-on-year contraction in second quarter alone. Many industries, like it's not spared, like hospitality, tourism, food and beverage, retail, wholesale, and the list goes on. Things will not be the same anymore. Both company and individuals need to be more agile and resilient in this normal. They need to faster adapt to a more digital, automated, and competitive world. At the same time, this is also a promise of the emergence of new business opportunity that organizations can tap on. In the last few months, has significantly introduced and accelerated trends. For example, low-touch economy, the rise of social distancing, and the possibility of the circuit breaker being switched on and off. What will emerge is what we call the low-touch economy, in which public gathering will be limited, travel restricted, and familiar activities like socializing, eating out, large events like concerts, conference will be curbed. Low-touch economy introduce new business model and wide range of opportunity as well for company to tap on. There will be a big shift in consumer buying behaviors and different industries will be impacted. For example, we spoke to companies in food and beverage industry that they turn their central kitchen into food productions for home delivery. And they're partnering with the online delivery companies and vendors like GrabFood, Foodpanda to help them to execute the delivery and the order. Fitness company offers online Zoom workout for their paid customer. And so does for education and training sectors, where they build more training content online and allow the professional manager executive to upgrade their skill and tap into their skill future grant. We have seen e-commerce has been there for a while. Singapore new economy, digital economy is expected to rate nearly $9.5 billion, according to global data research. And this shows a clear shift in consumer buying behavior and consumption. We have noticed that business has seen nearly 3 times of the normal growth in their online transaction volume. And this cut across groceries, restaurants, delivery, consumer, insurance, and even with properties. Singapore companies now need to compete for business at the international level because the barrier has removed, and you need to accelerate your digital capabilities to stay relevant to meet your digital consumer requirement. Like what Kenny has mentioned, government offers many incentives on the table. For example, the e-commerce booster that provide coverage up to 90% of the setup costs for the retailers that new to the e-commerce. And more recently, the new standard on the guideline on e-commerce transaction has been launched by the Enterprise Singapore and Singapore Standard Council. The emergence of remote working over the last few months has been quite prevalent. Many companies are still not ready to send all their employees back home, back to office when the world's reopen. With this massive working from home in the foreseeable future, it sparked a rethinking of the way offices can be run, streamline the processes, and digitizing the work to make it efficient. And the rise of this remote as well present opportunities and challenges. On the plus side, we see that organizations start to look into cost-saving initiatives on the real estate, utility, office supplies, and infrastructure. And lastly, We see the gig economy that are turning to become even more popular. The rise of short-term jobs. For one, in today's digital age, workforce are mobile. And it can be offered anywhere in the world. So companies are tapping into this opportunity to minimize their permanent headcount hiring and turn to more contract works. The job and location are now decoupled. So what are your priorities as the pandemic world has transformed the work world? From the recent research conducted by Ernst & Young, 41% of the bosses across 45 countries that they interviewed were investing to accelerate and automate their work environment as they prepare for post-COVID-19 world. Recently, by Gartner Research, they interviewed 3 in 4 CFOs are all planning to shift at least 5% of their permanent staff to remote work permanently. CFO already under immense pressure to tightly manage their costs and clearly sense an opportunity to realize the cost benefit of the remote workforce. So in order to build a resilient and agile finance operations that's vital, the ability to adopt new business model and opportunity, yet at the same time support remote working environment, will be crucial to the company's survivability. We see that organization, the management, CFOs need to embrace fast on the moving technology trend or at risk of losing to competitions. They need to reassess their organization digital priorities to support this new business model. At the same time, adopt new working practices to boost this productivity. And they need to also consider to upskill and enable their workforce to prepare for this new normal. There is one thing that we can be sure of, right? And we can be agreed that the traditional manner accounting process are no longer sustainable. The current business environment are more demanding and more destructive, and they need to support the remote working. So let me share something with you. This is how it looks like in today's finance and accounting world. And with so many people are working from home now, it just got harder. There are a lot of different people in finance accounting that involve in various activities and supported by sometimes inconsistent process. And the fragmented technologies that today you have, for example, multiple ERPs, different source systems, banks, informations, invoicing systems. These are all added to the complexity of managing your financial close. On top of that, the processes that you have today, the tribal knowledge that you own to some extent, making it difficult for you to collaborate. There's a lot of back and forth communication, email, meetings, exchanges over the instant messaging. Just make it harder for you really to produce the result at a timely manner. On top of that, every accounting department today that keeps the light on is to meet the regulatory and compliance requirement and reporting for the management. And in today's world, the demand from the management and expectation to have fast and accurate financial data for them to conduct scenario planning, budgeting, due to a market condition, and all these actually are very manual intensive. So let me ask you a few questions here. Where and how are you spending your time today? And what would you do if you have more time? And if you have more time, do you think how can you better support your business today? So this leads me to the next question, why manual accounting is not sustainable. It's challenging to efficiently close the books during a normal month. The current environment is multiplying those challenges in the distributed remote working. straining the resources, technology that you have, and at the same time, your worker need to balance between their family and the work life. Firstly, it takes too long. Manual efforts is number one bottleneck in financial close process. Consider this, the repetitive tasks that you have limiting your ability to focus on what are matters, on the high risk areas, on the strategic initiatives. Secondly, 55% that we surveyed felt that they are not completely confident that they can identify financial errors before reporting the results. In that survey, nearly 70% claim their organization has made significant business decisions on inaccurate financial data. Has working remotely today make it more difficult to identify those issues? Example, review your documents and update your leadership team on the status and results. Thirdly, it's expensive. Bottom performers spend more than 3 times on people than the top performer organization. In the old settings, people are the process. To scale up the business, accounting changes require more people, and people are costly. And lastly, this environment today has already deeply affected morale of the workers and so on. And 34% of employees' productivity is lost when actively disengaged. Your employees are concerned about their jobs, the market conditions, at the same time need to manage the repetitive work and the pressure from the work. So the current environment we felt is a multiplying of this current cost. Now, from staff accountants to controllers and to CFO, the old way of getting accounting work has caused pain for everyone. There's too many disparate systems, coupled with limited access to critical financial data, can slow down your closing process and prevent you from seeing where you are in your process. We have seen non-uniform processes that lead to control risk, undocumented tribal knowledge, post-business continuity risk. Employees can create capacity constraint and gap when their tribal knowledge that are no longer available for them when they work from home. Detailed, heavy spreadsheets increase likelihood of mistakes, escalating the risk of financial inaccuracy. They have to keep to manual work. There's no time for activities, just focusing on new risks, new opportunities. At the same time, also managing emails can be too overwhelming. And collaboration among the team are limited now due to the remote workforce. But you are not alone. While worse today, we have seen this sort of challenges more than 3,000 companies in the past, and we have helped them to develop a better way to work. In Blackline, we see the modern accounting as unified, collaborative, and achievable. We see that unified where we build confidence and clarity, standardizing your processes and data. Collaborative, allowing your remote workforce to work together, having the visibility across the tasks that they have in the entire processes. And achievable, to provide them a virtual close capability can be done quickly for immediate impact with accuracy. Our unified cloud platform enables you to build automated and consistent repetitive work through automations, build accuracy and control, and unifying the data. So how do we do that? Let's get into more detail. There are many facets in accounting. So where does Blackline fit into it? Blackline support activities today that is outside of your current ERPs or financial system. Those activities are still critical, where we gather the data from your primary ERP, subledgers, point of sales, credit card data, inventory system, invoicing system, and enable you to manage your financial close process seamlessly. We ensure the balance sheet integrity with the proper documentation, attachment, and substantiation. And we provide accountability and visibility for the management to understand where you are in your entire closing process. We enable remote audit so that whatever your employees is doing today in the remote workforce is auditable and transparent. And finally, we automate the mundane tasks and work that currently performed by your Excel spreadsheets, which is done, consistent, and accurate. We have many customers, all sizes across all industries, ranging from SME, small medium enterprises, to large enterprises. And it cut across as well from consumer and retail, technology, industrial, healthcare, and so on. Let me share with you further. And this is some of the proven outcomes that our organizations, our customers achieve from leveraging the technology. eBay achieved 70% of efficiency and reduction in the days to close. Sanoma, 80% of their reconciliation, manual reconciliation task was automated. And Coca-Cola, 55% reduction in manual effort. And the list goes on. I would like to take opportunity to share with you one of the interesting use cases, Domino. As you know, Domino is a quick serve restaurant that have large presence across 85 countries with 16,000 locations, 400,000 restaurants and franchises. They run about 40 million transactions every month. Domino is a company that embraces digital transformation at every aspect of their business. They automatically reconcile every point of sales transaction across all their locations and franchises using Blackline. The company has also put a lot of time and focus on researching and measuring the results. And because in today's digital world, they need to have accurate financial data to understand what are driving bottom line results and sales across the board. So before Blackline, some comparison here. They leverage a lot on Excel. They do a lot of manual reconciliation and matching, and they can't achieve a daily base, the reconciliation, the result on daily basis. As a result, with the voluminous data and unmatched transaction open items, they can only do at recon at the summary level. And it takes too long for them to achieve that objective. As a result, the management do not have visibility on the business view, the trend, the accurate financial data for them to do research. With Blackline, today, they achieve 99.9% match. It's a big improvement in accuracy and efficiency. And they reduce time spent as well. And those time that they free up can be spent on open item and researching on the trend. So this is a very interesting approach where organizations that across different industries that are leveraging Blackline to support them in their operations. And later on, my fellow colleagues and partners will be sharing further with you. So this is my last slide. In summary, Blackline, we have more than 3,000 customers in across 130 countries. We have more than 250,000 users that are Blackline users, all right? And at the same time, over 4 years running, Gartner has nominated Blackline as the leader in financial close, and so on. So this is my last slide. I thank you everyone for participating in this event, and I look forward to a more interactive session later on with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saw, for the insightful sharing. Next, may I now invite Mr. Ronald Wong from Ernst & Young to share more on some of the best practices for F&A teams. Mr. Wong, please.
Thank you. Welcome once again to the webinar. My name is Ronald Wong. I'm a partner with EY Financial Accounting and Advisory Services. This morning, I'll be sharing with you some insights of good practices that finance and accounting teams can adopt now and what to consider in the medium term. So it's been almost 6 months since the start of the pandemic, and I'm sure all of you have experienced the disruption it has caused, be it work or non-work related. But one thing about COVID-19 is that it really spares no one. Every single department of an organization is impacted. Some are impacted obviously more severely than others, but through my conversation with many finance teams across the last couple of months, the impact thus far has generally been significant. But before we launch in the topic, let's do a poll. Next slide, please. To get your feedback on what are the negative impacts of COVID-19 on your finance organization. Okay, so there are 5 selections here. 1 is difficulty in collaborating and communication. 2, delay in activities. 3, increase in regulatory and reporting documents. 4, not able to meet regulatory reporting timelines. And 5, all of the above. So maybe let's take 10 seconds to get your responses. Okay, maybe we can share the publish the results, please. Okay, so quite even in terms of the 3 top items. So I can see that delay in activities is top. Second is the difficulty in being able to collaborate and communicate. And I think the rest put all of the above. So I think, I read that article recently in Straits Times, and it basically says that 2 in 5 employees say that it takes longer time to achieve the same amount of productivity compared to pre-COVID time. So that is consistent with the responses given there. So thanks for your responses. It is important to understand the challenges so that we can target our limited resources to deal with them in the short term, while it is important to plan out what really is the norm in the medium term. Next slide, please. Okay, challenging times also present opportunities to reassess your finance and operating model. The key is to be able to assess the requirements, plan your responses quickly, and lastly, and most importantly, is to be able to rebound from the current disruption and emerge with a resilient finance organization. So this approach actually is similar to our Singapore Resilience Strategy, which basically focus on 3 key areas. First, it is to save jobs, support our workers, and protect people's livelihoods. Second is to help enterprises overcome these immediate challenges. And lastly, or thirdly, it is to strengthen the economic and social resilience so that we can emerge intact and stronger. So similarly, in the short term, which in EY we call the now phase, we need to deal with the most critical challenge, which is to address the challenge of a disrupted workforce and how we can support our people. This includes having a business continuity plan put in place. So example, split work arrangements, which your companies should have had in place before the circuit breaker. And most of you, having gone through it, would agree that it is disruptive, with many experiencing uncertainty and inconvenience at the same time. I remember the day before the circuit breaker, at the end of the day in office, I was thinking of what I need to do before I leave office. Should I carry my monitor and bring it home so that I could work from home more effectively? Who is going to water my plants in my room? So in the end, I decided to take the most important thing home, which is my plants. Luckily, they're small, right? So it's easy to carry. But indeed, I guess, unprecedented challenges it's a really, in challenging times, and with dampened economy, trouble with global issues is what we're facing today, right? But it's critical to ensure that organizations do not take a knee-jerk reaction by defaulting to redundancy initiatives. And it is great that the Singapore government has done a lot to ensure this doesn't happen by supporting a lot of organizations with the mega budgets that has been payouts that has been provided. So a skilled workforce with its established processes and controls take years to be put in place, and reducing the workforce will effectively be akin to writing off the investment that have been put in over the years. But I do understand it is easy to take the redundancy route, especially if organizations do not have agile solutions in the short term to deal with how to reposition resources and restructure processes to deal with it. Now, once the first step of workforce BCP is put in place, many companies will realize that processes cannot be just business as usual. This is because there will be changing requirements arising from companies reacting to the pandemic. So for finance, it could be ad hoc reporting requirements, performing scenario-based what-if analysis. And one of the challenges my clients face is the inability to extract and transform data with a quick turnaround time and being able to transfer information remotely due to cybersecurity concerns. Many found disparate processes and systems across business units and geographies, hindering the process of being able to retrieve data fast and accurate. In addition, processes are also not uniform across locations. Information are incomplete or inaccurate. Even within a single location, processes are also not streamlined, and fragmented applications resulted in difficulty in extracting information quickly, especially when you need to work remotely. And in some cases, these data have to be manually extracted and compiled, and is proving challenging in the current circumstance of added workload, as I mentioned earlier. And all these challenges have surfaced because of the real and immediate need for finance to support the business. During non-pandemic times, the urgency to find solutions is low. So this is the same situation, right, with many restaurants initially when we had the circuit breaker that did not have online options. And once the circuit breaker was put in place, they found it difficult to transition when they were forced to do so, right? If not, they'll have to go out of business. But luckily for them, there were many solution vendors and options for them to choose and partner with. And it is not as complex as a transition or having to redesign your finance functions to deal with the pandemic. So it is important and key in the short and medium term to really spend time to rethink of how to restructure your finance to be agile, to be able to support the new norm in finance ops. So what exactly is Agile Finance, right? So Agile Finance is really, a term to describe a new operating model for modern finance, investing in a range of new skills and competencies, and importantly, enabled by technologies. Two key characteristics which I think I want to call out amongst many others in terms of an Agile Finance. One is that an Agile Finance needs to be scalable with efficient accounting operations. What this means is that as business grow, for example, with new business lines, new acquisitions, etc., finance must be able to continue to support seamlessly and effectively instead of being on the back foot by hiring talent only when the business grows. And Agile Finance, secondly, also needs to be capable of effectively measuring and managing performance matrices and milestones and achieve continuous improvement to enable the business to apply new strategies and get services and products out to the market quickly. And this is where really finance drives to be an effective business partner to the rest of the organization instead of being a pure financial custodian. So now let's have a look at some of the considerations to address some of these challenges. Next slide, please. Okay, the first challenge I mentioned earlier, right, is to deal with a disrupted workforce as a result of having to work remotely. So in the short term, it is important to assess whether your current technologies are able to continue to support your reporting requirements. So identify activities that require face-to-face interaction and determine if the current technology can support it. Bucket these activities by priorities in terms of timeline and if possible, defer non-critical activities. For example, some companies may be doing a monthly balance sheet review, for example, right? Going through the entire balance sheet and looking at how to substantiate them. Now, with the added workload and challenge of work from home, consider if some of these monthly balance sheet review can now be done quarterly, or even it has to be done monthly, whether it is feasible to rotate some of these balance sheet items for review, focusing on just the critical accounts. So this same logic should be applied to every key activity that finance does, focusing on prioritization and leveraging on your current technology. And have these communicated as part of your BCP to your board and stakeholders or shareholders. This will provide confidence that your finance team has the agility in the short term to deal with these challenges. And I believe by now, all of you would have gone through this stage. You can use this to do a hindsight check against how your organization fared and what could have been done better. And next, in the medium term, consider doing a gap assessment of your current processes to determine if there are opportunities to make the processes more efficient. For example, less reliance on paper, doing more remote approvals, automate your reconciliation, automate your matching of records across, especially if you've got disparate systems and many systems within the organization. How do you automate the reconciliation? Reduce duplication of activities, etc. So again, consider processes in conjunction with technologies. This means that as you streamline your processes, think of how your existing IT solutions or systems can be enhanced and or assess agile finance enabling technologies in the market, which can help you to drive finance efficiency to the next level. This step is very important, and it's not just about sustaining the current norm, which most companies are dealing with, but really to ensure finance functions are able to scale up as the business grows and transforms, and at the same time being able to weather the next wave of pandemic. Obviously, touch wood, this doesn't happen, but you know that it is not within our individual control, or even Singapore for that matter. It requires a global effort, which is going to need an extended time to recover, as everyone is well aware of. So it is important to be prepared. So you'll be asking now, how do we implement a smart and quick solution to support an agile close process, which I have been talking about, right? More specifically, how do you create what we call a virtual command close center, or VCCC in short. So let's talk about the concept of VCCC and how to set one up in the next slide, conceptually. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so many organizations, after you reorganize their finance functions and teams to work remotely, are now moving on to looking at technologies to allow a sustained and scalable remote close. And a virtual command center is the new norm, in fact, which a lot of companies are calling it VCCC. But it's not complex. It basically surrounds three key pillars, as you can see on the slide. One is your current processes. Two is your technology and people. Three will be the people. First, it entails streamlining existing processes. First, as mentioned earlier, this includes revisiting your existing processes, determining how to resequence them. So, for example, reprioritize what is critical and what is good to have, and then apply materiality to further drive a risk-based approach. Think about how to make collaboration more effective by setting up protocols. This could be enhancing the leveraging and sharing of information and resources across teams. So some companies I spoke to have tried to push the close processes online during the circuit breaker, but has not been totally successful due to technology issues. For example, they found that it's not totally effective to perform all activities through emails, calls, spreadsheets, and some tasks cannot be collaborated effectively online. So for managers, work from home also makes it difficult for them to monitor their team members, and hence productivity may be impacted. So breaking up teams and creating small work groups and having more regular touch points, and then have all these touch points filtered up through the chain of command is more effective than trying to have larger meetings on a less regular basis, which is what some of us or most of us do pre-COVID. Next is leveraging technology. Pre-COVID, it's easy to turn to each other, right? Set up meetings, resolve issues, ask for signatures, collaborate. With work from home, these conveniences that we have been taking for granted turns into challenges. So first is to think of how to digitize your financial documents, moving hard copies to soft, embarking on electronic signatures, etc. Second is how to bring the process workflows online onto a single platform to improve collaboration and allow managers to have a live view of what each team member is doing, what is the status of the close, without having to resort to multiple calls, WhatsApp, and emails. An ability to monitor these activities or KPIs online drives improvement, right? Because they can be identified and monitored very specifically. So, and I think Gary earlier mentioned as well, platform that allows auditors to perform their review of tasks, including auditing of supporting documents, would again drive a remote close, remote working more effectively. Okay. So in addition, online communication also needs to be embedded within the process. For example, we are using Zoom now in companies that use Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, etc. Use Google Docs, or if you have Microsoft Teams, share documents within to enhance collaboration. And of course, not forgetting the technology part, the VPN infrastructure needs to be considered to support heavy reliance on online mode of communications. Last but not least, in the remote close is to consider the people aspect. As mentioned, collaboration protocols will need to be revisited. Smaller teams will need to be identified to facilitate agile decisions with proper protocols to escalate issues, having more frequent cadence meetings to drive decision making. Workload or staff will definitely increase initially when moving from offline to online. I'm sure many of you can identify to that. The boundary between work and home also becomes blurred, right? So at a personal level, self-discipline is key, and respecting each other's time is critical in a work from home remote work environment. And technology must be implemented for sure, right? To ensure that there is scalability and sustainability to your extended remote close or remote working. If not, over time, this will manifest itself in higher staff turnover, and the cycle of disrupted or distracted workforce will repeat itself. So now that we have gone through the key considerations in setting up a virtual close command center, let's overlay the priorities in the timeline, which in EY, we define it as now, next, and beyond. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the now, all companies should have adopted work from home, given we are unsure how long this pandemic is going to last and whether we will go back into a lockdown mode. We must first think of digitizing the current processes. So set up that BCCC, as I mentioned earlier, ASAP, to bring all tasks online as much as you can, which can then help facilitate your remote close. Streamline balance sheet substantiation by revisiting the current processes. Once again, think of how to digitize that process as well. And in the next phase, which is the 6 to 12 months phase, take that opportunity to embark on a systematic finance transformation journey, right? Start off by revisiting your current finance processes and determine how you can transform it to ensure that it's lean and effective. This includes understanding data capture, automating the processes to facilitate data capture and data transformation, rethink about your current technology landscape and how to integrate them better. This can be done by removing duplicate technologies and combining purchases of technologies to leverage your cost of acquisition, right? And putting in also middleware solutions that can talk to disparate systems to enhance integration without having to embark on the tedious process of trying to bring everyone onto a single system. This also helps to de-risk the organization being held hostage, right, by a single technology vendor. And lastly, ensure that there is effective change management programs designed to ensure effective adoption, as no amount of technology can help the organization if the people are reluctant to adopt and do their own, and they may end up doing their own workaround solutions, which then brings the process back to the old way of doing things, which is what we want to avoid. So with proper transformation journey, considering the 4 pillars, hopefully organizations will be able to emerge from the pandemic with being more resilient. So now, the discussion in the last 15 minutes, let's take a quick poll to do a self-reflection. Okay, so the question is, to what extent do you believe that there are still digital opportunities to be taken by your finance organization? Do you think that there is a small extent, moderate extent, or you think that there is still quite a lot of opportunities for you to explore digital opportunities? So maybe give you again 10 seconds to to click the response, and then we'll debrief. Okay, can we show the poll, please? Poll results, please. Okay, so I guess a lot of people are in the middle, as expected, to a moderate extent, right? And to a large extent, it's the second highest, which is important. But I think the $1 million question here is really in identifying them and developing a view of your future finance organization. So my parting advice to all finance teams is, especially the leaders on the call, don't wait for the next pandemic to start actions, right? To future-proof your finance organization. Start the planning now, right? As changing processes, deciding technologies, skilling your people, getting buy-in for change requires a significant amount of time, right? And the last thing we want to do is to spend all resources, for example, like pouring water into a boat that just to keep it, afloat, when we could be taking advantage of the current pandemic to leapfrog your competitors. So hope this session has been helpful. Looking forward to furthering conversations on how to get you started on your journey towards transformation. We'll be transitioning to the panel discussion next. So let me hand you over to Adele, Senior Manager in my team, who would be moderating the session. Thank you, Adele.
Okay, thanks, Ronald. Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, so my name is Adele. Just a little bit of introduction. So I'm in the Financial Accounting Advisory team in EY. I specialize in terms of accounting and finance, especially when it comes to transformation work, and that includes finance automation as well. So I'm going to be the moderator for the panel discussion this morning. We're going to take the next 40 to 45 minutes or so to have an open discussion. And immediately preceding that, we're going to have Q&A. So I think there was a message in the chat that said to please submit your Q&A questions via the Q&A option. So please do so even throughout the panel so that I could catch some of these questions and pose it to the panel members that we have this morning. Okay, so on the panel this morning is Gary, who you heard from in the first segment, Ronald, who you just heard from EY, and we have a panelist, a guest that we have invited, Jason Ang, who is a director from DFS Group, and his position is the Global Finance Transformation and Operations. So I think Jason's experience is really in regards to finance transformation. He has many years with this. So we thought that, coming with an ensemble of these three is actually quite a good mix, right? Gary from a technology perspective, Ronald from a finance and consultant perspective, and Jason for, that's close to the ground and a user that can share his own experience that probably can sing to the hearts of some of y'all today. Okay, so let me start off the panel discussion. We've heard from Gary and Ronald this morning already, so maybe it's good that we can start off with hearing from Jason himself first. So Jason, just maybe you could share what are some of these challenges that your finance organization or your experience in various finance organizations have in shifting to a distributed working environment. So we talked a lot, Ronald mentioned about how we're working virtually now. What are some of these challenges, and maybe despite these challenges, what are some of those positive experiences that you actually experienced?
Thank you, Adele. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So I guess I will share my experience in the context of the recent circuit breaker. I guess in terms of how we experience it in the organization, a few weeks before the circuit breaker, we actually had been working through a Team A and Team B arrangement already. So I guess it didn't catch us by total surprise. As a finance leadership team, we also make an assessment and did a bit of scenario planning as well. Looking at if we were not to have access to the office, to the equipment, to the printer, and to paper, how would we do? But in saying that, I guess in the lead up to the circuit breaker itself and us going to remote working, there were a couple of challenges, which I'll summarize, I guess, into two broad themes, people and infrastructure. I think Gary and Ronald would have shared a little bit about this. But I guess in terms of people, resistance to change, I think getting the team to actually deal with not able to print, not being able to come to the office, and to the people who are less technically inclined, having them to actually get on a collaboration tool like Microsoft Teams and Zoom was proved to be quite difficult at the start. Trust is one of those. Getting the supervisors to trust the team to do their work. And also the other way around, the staff needing to actually overcompensate in certain instances to work harder just to show their bosses that they are doing more work and on their computer all the time, round the clock. I guess broadly also adapting to a new way of working. I think a lot of people have felt that the boundary between work and personal life has blurred. And that required the finance leaders within the organization to actually lend support on this particular topic. In terms of infrastructure, access to physical file, not being able to go back to the office, I think some of the people who are used to actually having access to paper, looking at contracts, that proved to be a bit of a challenge at the start. One of the constant complaint that we had was lack of a suitable workplace at home. I don't think everyone has got a dedicated workspace. So whilst the organization has got everyone issued a laptop, but I guess the comment was that the monitors were not big enough. The screen was not big enough to facilitate that. And obviously, most of us have got kids, school-going kids at home. So the school-based learning proved to be a very huge distraction, so to speak. I guess in terms of infrastructure as well, Wi-Fi, unstable Wi-Fi, having different bandwidth across the team as well, that proved to be difficult. In terms of dealing with communication tool on Microsoft Teams, for example, where we used having the host now manage a conversation within the tool itself, that needed some getting used to, and it's a totally new ballgame altogether. As a start, I think people were quite reluctant to actually switch on their video and to show themselves. And as leaders, we had to actually put on the video and to show the way. Without a video, obviously, it was difficult to read body cues as well. So I think that was something that we had to get across. One thing that we sort of experienced was a possible increased risk of cyber risk. I think with everybody working from home, I think our IT department had to spread the word out and to communicate the risk of phishing and malware with people working across the at home. So there was great exposure as well in that regards. So I guess to your question about what are the positive experiences, I think there were plenty. I think if we were to say COVID-19 had a silver lining, quite possibly it's to accelerate a change in mindset. I think I touched on trust being possibly lacking at the start. I think with the work from home arrangement now into our third month, I think we've seen trust building up within the teams. Leaders are now trusting that their teams can perform work, judging teams by delivery of work as opposed to FaceTime, which we now don't have. I suppose as a transformation lead within the organization, one of my key trusts and one of my key objectives is being able to equip the team with the ability to work flexibly. And whilst we have gained momentum pre-COVID-19, I think with COVID-19 now in place, we have no choice, and the ability to now work remotely has really accelerated. I think the positive thing is we have actually completed 3 period close since COVID-19 started. Tools which we are implementing like Blackline is able to help, taking away the reliance on paper, for example. The workflow interfacing helps to route journals and reconciliations across to the right approvals.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the ability and availability of remote work also increases the appeal of us as an employer of choice. And that was a positive. And I suppose to end off, in terms of collaboration, even the social aspect, we've seen teams actually organizing and being creative and thinking out of the box. For example, having virtual breakfast. My teams have done that. We even had a Friday social where people got together to play Pictionary. We had organized town halls where we have adopted technology to have question and answers as well. So all in, I think the experience, while challenging, has got some positive spin to it as well. Thanks, Adele.
Okay, thanks, Jason, for the very, very comprehensive rundown in terms of your experience. I mean, I like the fact that it's really broken up into the people aspect, which we'll get back to in a bit, and then the infrastructure and the technology, right? So on that point in terms of technology, maybe I want to kind of ask the next question as a follow on to Gary, right? I mean, Jason talked about being resistant to change. But how then do you see then, our finance teams being open to these new technologies as yours, as with others, right? Especially in this period of time.
Okay, thank you, Adele. That's a very good question, right? So interestingly, during the normal days, excuse me, when people are too busy just to focus on their tribal knowledge, things that they do best, leveraging on, for example, like Excel spreadsheets to do their financial close and so on. But then, when during this COVID-19 and the circuit breaker imposed, I think a lot of organizations and even people start to realize that they can't sustain with this, the existing normal that they have, right? And definitely, I think initially they are reluctant to embark on this capability, but they have no choice. They have to embark on these changes and are looking to the various technology available to help them to for example, like online collaborations, for start with, looking into way how they could share the document across, right? Leveraging on the cloud technology like Office 365, Google Docs, and so on to help them to collaborate and exchange information. And I think they just start to getting better at it and learn in terms of ways to look into the gaps that they have and how to improve and address those gaps.
Okay. That's a good point. I mean, you touched on in terms of some of the examples of technology, how they're going to do it. Maybe, Ronald, you can chip in terms of, how, these finance teams put it into action then. I mean, from what you see.
Yeah, I think, from a technology standpoint, in the current situation, Agile Finance is really key, right? Because historically or traditionally, finance team, when we talk about IT solutions, is usually the big changes, right? The ERP, etc. And those kind of implementation of technology takes a while to do. And obviously finance teams are very, very busy in the current environment, and hence adopting technology would probably be not first on their mind, because historically we're thinking, oh, it's going to take a long time, right? So Agile Finance solutions that we see popping up nowadays, it's key to help drive that change, right? And also nowadays, finance-enabled solutions are designed for finance teams. No longer, it is IT teams that take ownership of it. So with these two, changes in the market in terms of technology, I see that finance teams are now more open to adopt such technologies. So the technology helps, and also obviously, as with any process change or IT technology adoption, change management, effective change management is important, yes, right? Get the right buy.
Yeah, so exactly that, right? Which is what Jason mentioned right from the start, or rather in his in his views in terms of the people portion, right? So actually, Ronald, I think previously in your slides you did talk about some of these elements, right? Technology, process, and people. Maybe perhaps you could kind of share with the audience, right, why these elements are important, right? How does it come together? And then perhaps, we could also get Jason and Gary to kind of weigh in from their perspective in terms of the people and the technology.
Yeah, I think that's very important, right? The 4 pillars that were shared earlier. Adopting a technology before we even do that, right, is to ensure that your current processes are already streamlined, and effective, right? Because there's no point in trying to, put a technology on a process or processes which are currently not effective, right? So I think that is one of the, I would say, a very common approach taken by many companies, which is basically just lift and shift your current processes into technology and hope that the technology can resolve your efficiency issues. But that approach is definitely not recommended. First, look at your processes, streamline that, make sure that it's effective, then leverage on the technology to help with the efficiency. And that is really the key to a successful implementation of technology.
Yeah. Okay. So it is obvious, right, that the interplay of these pillars and it needs to come together. It cannot be on a silo, right? So I mean, Jason, maybe you can share some of your views in terms of the of the interplay of these pillars as well. Especially you hit on previously in terms of the people aspect.
So in my organization, I guess in terms of the transformation mandate, we have organized ourselves in 4 pillars actually, what we call SPUR. So it's systems, processes, upscaling, which deals with the training aspect of people, and reculturing. So I think all these pillars complement each other before we can even take ourselves to the next step. So in terms of systems, I think that deals with the systems that we are implementing now. Blackline is one of those. We have got other systems that we are implementing. We as an organization are also organizing Center of Excellence for RPA as well, amongst others. System deals with the increased efficiency and cutting down on manual repetitive tasks that the finance teams are doing. Okay, then we deal with processes. In each of the system implementation, we've got BPRs integrated within the plan as well. So BPR process is undertaken as part of system implementation and also done in isolation. I guess my comment about BPR is it's a much quicker gain than a full-fledged system implementation. And the way we have done it in the organization is it's grounds up led. It's organized and ideas are coming out from the teams. But one of the difficulty here is the ability for teams to challenge their way of doing things. And that's difficult because pretty much you're saying that what I've done is not right for the past many years, right? So that's the difficulty, and getting out of the comfort zone and dealing with something that you're not familiar with and identifying process efficiencies there. Upskilling part is about future-proofing our organization. And I think what we have done pre-COVID and a lesser extent lately is organizing upskilling initiatives for the finance organization, and that we have done. So we've organized collaboration with external providers and also invited speakers in our organization as well. And that is really to future-proof our team so that they can deal more comfortable in the topics like data analytics, RPA, and other technologies. In terms of reculturing, that's a part that I think tend to be neglected. So the way we have done this is having an innovation team set up. I'm sure people in this forum would have different variations of such a setup. But in our organization, we've got an innovation team set up, which is a virtual team with representatives from across the finance function. Really, the aim is to drive ideas and have to really build up the DNA of the team. It's a ground-up initiative, and the team is really challenging norms and driving business process initiative. And this team is also the ones that organizes collaboration activities as well for the organization. I hope that covers your
Yes, yes, very good. I mean, you very thankful that you could share with the many participants here, in terms of your initiatives, because in other forums that myself and Ronald have had with other participants, right? You touch on the innovation team, the center of excellence. I think setting such things will only drive that culture within the organization to be able to become to adopt all these kind of technologies and have a mindset change, right? A shift of their change. I mean, we heard of certain companies appointing champions to champion this, and through that they see success stories, they get motivated, and they will then be able to be part of be a driver of that finance transformation that the company actually sets out to do, right? You touched on the upskilling and knowledge sharing and training. That's very interesting as well, right? In terms of passing down knowledge so that everybody knows what's going on. I said that part on people getting motivated as well, right, to want to do something. So I mean, I just want to carry on this topic because I think it's important, right? This interplay of the technology, people, and process. So I also want to hear Gary's views, perhaps, right? Your perspective from a technology player, right? How that interplays as well, right? And what are some of these maybe tips, if I can use, right, that you can share with the participants today?
Yeah. So I think this is a really good question here. And as I would like to resonate what Jason and Robert shared earlier on, the people and the process part is equally important as technology, right? And ability to look into a bigger part on this different angle helps to provide a consistent and technology focus or business direction to build an agile finance. Give you an example, right? We've seen many cases before that technology players work with different segments of, for example, like the IT team, that coming to specific use cases to help them, for example, to streamline the process, like robotic process automations and so on. But as they start building this across without having the visibility across the function and what the organization is trying to head to, they get into challenges where these are all disparate technologies and islands of technologies that they need to manage, and it becomes a big issue for them. So how we work with our customer together, for example, with the leverage the partners that we have like EY, right? Is looking holistically with the management in terms of what are the digital priorities, right? And then setting an approach where it can address specific to their current challenges, use cases, at the same time considering the roadmap to allow them to scale in today's world, right? And for example, like Blackline Solutions, we are purpose built our solution ground up to just address the financial close and automate the accounting function. So all the capabilities, like what you mentioned earlier on, these are all embedded in the capabilities here. And we do hear a lot today as well, some confusion maybe that audience may have in terms of, I do have ERPs, so why do I need to have another financial close solution? In today's world, if you look at it, because it's so dynamic, just like say the F&B example that I mentioned, all of a sudden they need to interface with different data sources, like from the online delivery for their invoices, delivery notes and orders. And they need to reconcile with their bank statement, their point of sales, and their GL system. And these are all created outside of the ERP system they have. Right, so I think it's important to be able to look into this holistically, prioritize what drives their business, and leveraging the technology not from point solution, but looking at holistically to help them to solve today's problem, yet at the same time make their finance capability more agile and resilient.
Yes, agree on that point, right? In terms of especially what you brought up in terms of the various technologies, and it doesn't mean that there's only one fit for purpose, right? It is about bringing it together. I think Ronald also touched upon this just now in his segment in terms of it doesn't mean that just because your ERP can't cater for it means it needs to be changed, right? You can get complementary systems to see what works together, right? So maybe on that point then, right, Ronald, you mentioned this thing about the disparate systems. there are many finance enablers out there, right? How do you select them? I mean, what is optimal, right? You mentioned putting together a ecosystem, a small, let's say a small ecosystem. But what are we talking about? 5, 10? You know, I mean, is there a number? Maybe there isn't. But you know, what are some of these considerations that the participants today can hear from you in terms of what they can think about when they really think about, you know, putting things together?
Yeah, so I think there is no one size fit all, right? I mean, you're talking about an entire organization's technology solution stacks, right? So again, there's no one size fit all. The key thing is to first take inventory of your existing technology solutions across the entire organization, right? Then first identify, number one, are there any duplication of technologies, right? So for example, I've seen some companies where they may have, you know, one country or one region may have bought licenses on a RPA solution, for example. And then you go to another region, they are using another RPA tool, you know, and there's no harmonization, right? And I think I mentioned earlier, one thing is that if you can harmonize all the solutions together, not only will it help in the efficiency and consistency in application of technology solutions, it also helps you to negotiate, you know, for the pricing of the licenses, right, across the entire organization. So that's one. Two is then look at your existing solutions once you have kind of eliminated the duplication, is to then see what is your current state, right? And what are the gaps that I mentioned in your processes? So Jason mentioned that, yes, I know you do a business process re-engineering is a quick way to kind of you know, get over some of this inefficiency. But from a longer term, is to really look at these processes, what are the solutions that support it, and from an organizational perspective, what are the type of permutations that you can take, right? So, and in order to do that, it is a very difficult, you know, I would say task, right? Because I mentioned the $1 million question on digital solution is which one, right? So, you know, listening on calls like that and similar calls or sessions where you understand what are the technology solutions out in the market, you can go to Gartner. You know, they have a whole host of, you know, solutions out there for different processes, R to R, P to P, etc. Look at those, then listen to what the vendors have to say surrounding their technology, then design your blueprint, right, for your technology ecosystem and landscape. Then from there, you may end up with, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, you know, technology solutions. So be it, right? Because you're looking from a process point of view and not really from a pure technology point of view. And that, I think that's really the key point.
Okay, yeah, I guess then the point that is that structured approach is probably the most important rather than coming up with a number, right? I mean, whatever the result is the result, right? But if that structured approach and that thought process has been considered, it would bring you to whatever answer in terms of you know, in terms of the technology solutions, right? To that, Jason, I mean, maybe you can share from a user perspective, right? Then when you did this selection process for your organization, was it pretty similar in terms of the thought process? And then what did you arrive at? Maybe, you know, your sharing could give some guidelines to some of these participants if they want to embark on this selection process.
So just to clarify, so considerations when we're selecting a new technology, yeah?
Yes,
so,
yes, especially because there are so many out there.
Yeah. I guess top of mind, cost, right? Given the current climate, I think cost consideration, not just in terms of the initial setup, but in terms of the run cost. I think that's the first criteria. And obviously, in making any investment, organization needs to look at the ROI, the return on investment, and that's key. I think Rona spoke about having different disparate systems in different geographies and having different systems come up at different times. I think compatibility with the existing technology is important. With a tool like BlackLife, for example, maybe compatibility with SAP. We look at also credibility of the company behind the technology and who are the players, who are the big companies that have implemented that technology. I think that gives a bit of comfort and a bit of reassurance that that's technology that can possibly run in our own organization. Usability as well, interface. I think a lot of new technology these days would cater to that, but I think that's something that we look at primarily. We have got functions looking at the interfacing and seeing how they respond to it, whether they feel that that's easy to use, and that's key, because if you choose a product that is not user-friendly, I think when you adopt it, user adoption wouldn't be as great as you would like. And so that's very important. I guess one of the things that we would also want is, and also to consider, is after-sales support, whether the technology and the vendor behind the technology can support a company after you've got the technology set up, and that's critical. So I guess I've summarized that from my own experience.
Yes, thanks. Actually, that's very good. It's really from a user experience, right? I mean, when Ronald shared in terms of that structured approach, it is the thought process and going into the implementation. When you're in the implementation, as Jason has shared, the costing, the after sales support. I mean, these are really very good considerations from a user experience, right? Okay, so maybe just let me kind of just summarize before I get into the Q&A in terms of some of these key themes that we talked about today. I think as a takeaway, from what I've heard, right? I mean, we spent a bit of time talking about the key pillars, right? The process, the technology, the people, and the organization. That interplay and the interrelation of that, I think, is one of the key things that we've heard today from the three experts, right? Some of the pro tips at the end you heard from Ronald with regards to the thought process that you need to take when you do a selection of technology as part of your finance transformation journey, and some of the considerations that Jason also has shared in terms of, from a user perspective, what is important. Okay, so I want to just spend a little bit of time going to the Q&A because we have a few that have come in. So maybe if I can look at some of these. Okay, the first question, I think, let me pose this to Gary. One of the participants, Suito, has asked, okay, many of our finance staff have difficulty to work without having to look at the paper documents. Can you share with us what the available solution for systematically digitizing all documents so that it can be easily identified and retrieved as and when needed, and all the IT infrastructures required to enable this?
Okay, all right. Okay, so this is a very good question. We know that a lot of organizations are still relying heavily on the paper-based documents. There are a couple of initiatives going on today, right? I mean, if you look at it nationwide, government encourage the companies, SME, to be part of the e-invoice platform across the organization and the nation. On company perspective, for those that need to handle the paper-based documents, a couple of technology available where they can do like robotic process automation, the OCR, those and scan the paper-based information and then translate that into a digital data. And that allow them to be able to manage those data with the systems and the solution available. In terms of capability-wise, there is many out there. There can be a cloud-based solution where they can store the data right on the subscription basis, or of course they can also look into the on-prem where they need to invest on the software and the hardware equipment to store those informations. I hope I answered the question here.
Yes, based on what they wrote, yes. Okay, the next question is from Ronald, a participant, Mia Huang. His question is, prior to COVID, tech up and process transformation are already threatening jobs, especially finance and accounting, bookkeeping. The ABCs, AI, blockchain, and cloud seem to be the biggest threat. So some say that tech and process transformation will create new roles and jobs. Is that true? What do you think? Will these be more than the jobs that are going to be taken away?
Okay, so I think this question is on everybody's mind, right? Whether we will lose our jobs when AI takes over and machine learning takes over. I think that if you plan your stepping up of your finance organization into the future carefully, the job roles definitely can be restructured. Two, I think Jason mentioned earlier about reskilling. That is an important and key part of this process, right? To ensure that, we do not end up, having people lose their jobs because, in time to come, AI or machine learning replaces certain jobs. But one thing that is very important right now is really to look at routine processes and try to do away with it by leveraging technology. That is for sure you need to do. Because if you don't do that, those people who are doing these routine tasks, like all the reconciliation, matching, etc., these jobs, I would say, or these jobs roles, I would say, will be the first to go, right? And that's for sure. I mean, you're already seeing shared service centers, center excellence, doing those jobs before all these, automation came about. Now even the shared service center has shrunk in size because a lot of the tasks that they have been doing now are replaced by RPA technologies. So I guess my advice is, first, do away all the routine jobs, redesign the job roles for these people so that they can be reskilled and repurposed, going forward. So, upskilling. Two is to how to leverage on some of these technologies as an ecosystem, right? So in the past, when RPA just came out, a lot of people are using it to try to replace some routine tasks. But nowadays, with a lot of technologies that is pre-built off the shelf, it already has RPA capabilities in there already, right? For example, Blackline. Then the question you need to ask yourself is, how do then you repurpose the current RPA bots that you have to then do maybe data gathering or data prep to make the process of your technology more efficient? Meaning, like for example, the response that Gary spoke about earlier, how to then bring those data into a technology, for example, like Blackline, to make that process more efficient. So that is what I'm seeing some of the companies, larger companies, doing with RPA currently, instead of just trying to use it to replicate an entire process.
Okay. Before I go to the next question, Jason, what do you think? I mean, from a user perspective, being in an organization, jobs being replaced by the ABCs, right? As it quite nicely put out, AI, blockchain, and cloud, right? What do you see in terms of organization?
No, I definitely echo the sentiments of Ronald. I think it's not going to go away, our jobs. What technology has done is it takes away a lot of the manual repetitive tasks that we waste a lot of time on, right? We now shift our organization to more value-added activities. From the experience of our RPA practice, for example, we still need our guys to be doing exception handling, dealing with the unusual circumstances that the RPA bot cannot do. Increasingly, the accounting standards as well has got judgment as well. I think we are far away from the days when AI would be able to interpret the judgments behind the accounting standards. I think that's where, as practitioner and accounting practitioner, I think that's where we still have our job. It will not go away. That's my view. In our organization, I guess, if you look at a triangle, previously the triangle, the lower base is the manual and repetitive tasks.
Right.
And the higher ones are where the judgments are. We are looking at inverting the triangle, and that's the next-gen finance vision that we have. Our guys spending more time on judgment, decision-making, So yeah,
exactly.
it's not going to go away so quickly. Yeah, that's my.
Yes, exactly. Okay. There's a direct question for Gary. What is actually Blackline doing to help the business? The usual ERP should capture at least 70% of the business processes and 80% of the FP&A process. Otherwise, it will not be efficient. That's the question, but I guess maybe, for my read of it, I guess there's probably a question now in terms of the complementary nature of Blackline to ERP side.
Sure. Okay, thank you for the question. So yes, indeed, that ERP is designed, right, to power the finance and the heart of the business, right? that include the invoicing, AR, AP, and so on. And however, if you look at it also when the ERPs is out there, right, there's certain area where it falls short, right, especially in the closing process where this, what Ronald mentioned, the record to report space. And this is why, if you ask today the F&A team, they spend, especially towards the month end or quarter end, between 7 to 11, what we call from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., trying to get their books and closing, reconciliation, check on their closed task list, and so on. Why there's so many people still relying on the processes, relying on the manual and repetitive work and Excel spreadsheet? That's because those are not being able to handle by the ERP. It can be 20%, but it consumes 80% of the importance of the company by providing financial accurate data. So where Blackline fit in here is that complement your existing ERP, at the same time also managing all the data sources that not in ERP today. Just as I mentioned earlier on, the F&B, where they now need to incorporate the data from the Deliveroo or GrabFood for them to reconcile on daily basis. That is not going into the ERP, right? It will be done manually today. And that is where the sweet spot Blackline provide. And not only that, we have a recent conversation with another training company. They are looking at reconcile and matching with the grants, right? The Skill Future grants. And all this data are outside of the ERP. So in the today digital world where we are embarking on, you will expect more data sources that come in from disparate systems because other vendors that are providing those data in order for you to provide your online business. And that's where Blackline will fit in to complement your existing infrastructure and systems.
Okay, thank you. I'm mindful of time. We actually have quite a few Q&As. I don't think we can answer all of them. So apologies if we can't get to you. Maybe we can reach out to you, especially for those that you have mentioned your name and in the Q&A. We will reach out to you separately. But maybe I can just take one more. And this is for Jason. So the question is, many IT-enabled productivity solutions such as data analytics, planning and budgeting solutions, RPA, are financially out of reach for many SMEs. What is your view? Jason, I think you're on mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess when you look at it, I don't know about the products in the market and how much it costs in terms of placement within the SME, but I think we don't have to, like I said, we don't have to go for full-fledged system implementation. I think if you want to start embarking on a bit of a transformation journey, I think you can start with BPR. I think that's where maybe to the participant who raised the question, I think we can start from BPR and we're looking at how things are done currently. I think that's a less cost sort of solution. Getting teams to think about challenging whether they need to do a certain process, which they are used to doing. I think that possibly could be a solution. I know a lot of organizations are struggling with costing now, cost issues.
Yeah.
So I suppose if I was to propose a quick solution is to relook at the things that we currently do and tackle the business processes. I think that's where I would recommend. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jason. Okay, so like I said, I'm mindful of time. I will try to answer your questions separately and reach out to you. So with that, I would like to thank the panelists for their inputs at the panel today and also answering some of these questions that are hot topics actually. And with that, thank you. I'm going to hand it back to Priscilla from SBF.
Yep. Thank you, Adele and our panelists for your sharing and a lively discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation today. We hope the discussion have helped to provide you with a greater insights on navigating through the new normal with Agile Finance. Before you log off, we wish to invite our panelists to remain online and turn on their cameras while we take a virtual group photo. Yep. Okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you all. Lastly, we would love to hear your feedback on the event, so please click on the survey link when you exit. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.